There's a principle for living that sounds so simple, one we've all heard in some form. Do not do to others what you would not want them to do to you. But the older you get, the more you realize this isn't just a moral teaching. It's a profound form of self-protection. You don't like being bad-mouthed behind your back, do you? Then, when you're in the middle of a chat, no matter how tempting it is to gossip, you should probably hold your tongue. Not because you're some noble saint, but because the mouth that gossips today could be the subject of gossip tomorrow. Eventually, it will be your turn to be caught in the crossfire of whispers. You don't want to be met with cold indifference when you're at your most vulnerable, do you? Then, when you see someone else fall on hard times, don't turn your back and tell yourself, "It's none of my business." The world operates in loops. The way you treat others will, sooner or later, be the way the world treats you. The investor Ray Dalio calls this a feedback loop. Nothing you do ever truly disappears. It just goes out into the world, makes a full circle, and eventually comes knocking on your door. Sometimes, it's a gentle knock-a-cold glance from a colleague. Other times, it's a slap across the face when you least expect it. This isn't some mystical, spiritual form of karma. It's simply the consequence of living for a long time in an environment that you, yourself, have helped create. Inevitably, you will be affected by its climate. To be honest, to be kind, to be fair, you don't do these things because other people necessarily deserve it. You do them because you need to live in a world where those qualities exist. You cannot hope to live a life of integrity within a system of deceit that you have personally contributed to, because you don't live alone. You communicate, you collaborate, you love, you need help. And in all of these connections, you cannot control everyone else, you can only control how you behave. But it is precisely your behavior that subtly establishes the rules of the game for all the relationships that surround you. The standards you set, whether high or low, will be the standards that are slowly reflected back at you. If you feign closeness to win someone over, they will slowly learn to be wary of you. If you erupt in anger every time things don't go your way, people will gradually avoid you, no longer daring to be honest with you. So, do not do the thing you fear others will do to you. Not because you're afraid of being judged, but because every time you do, you are laying another brick in the foundation of the world that you yourself will have to live in tomorrow. Not everyone needs to be a saint, but at the very least, don't create a vicious cycle and then act surprised when it comes back to bite you. Because that little bit of harmless malice you indulge in today might just be the spark that burns down the entire forest of your relationships later on. Think of yourself as an architect, not of buildings, but of the invisible structures that govern your life, your relationships, your reputation, your inner peace. Every interaction is a brick. Every word is a design choice. Every action is a line drawn on a blueprint. Most of us walk through life assuming we are merely inhabitants of a world that has been built for us. We complain about the drafty rooms of our friendships, the cracked foundations of our trust, the narrow hallways of our opportunities. We blame the original builders, our parents, our society, our luck. But the profound and terrifying truth is that you are, and always have been, the chief architect of your own social and psychological reality. You are laying bricks every single day. The question is, what are you building? Are you constructing a fortress designed to keep everyone out, leaving you safe but utterly alone? Are you building a labyrinth of your own making, with so many winding corridors of white lies and subtle manipulations that you yourself get lost within it? Or are you building a sanctuary, a place of mutual support and authentic connection, a structure that can weather any storm? This process of construction, this natural psychological manipulation, isn't about Machiavellian schemes or overt control. It is far more subtle, more fundamental than that. It's about the unspoken rules you establish through your very presence, your default settings for engaging with the world. These rules dictate the emotional climate around you, and most of us are completely unaware we are even setting them. We are architects working in the dark, wondering why the house we've built feels so cold. Today, we're going to turn on the lights, we will explore the 5 unspoken laws of this natural manipulation, the default blueprints we all use without realizing it. And in understanding these laws, you will gain the power to consciously and deliberately design a life that doesn't just look good from the outside, but feels good from the inside. A life where you don't have to fear the feedback loop, because you are intentionally sending out the very things you wish to receive. If this idea of becoming the conscious architect of your own life is already sparking a new perspective for you, take a moment to subscribe to Mind Decode Explained. We journey through these intricate landscapes of the mind together, discovering the blueprints that can set us free. The first unspoken rule is perhaps the most profound, and it is the law of the mirror. This law states that what you most intensely and irrationally judge, criticize, or despise in other people is often a disowned part of yourself. The great psychologist Carl Jung called this concept the shadow. The shadow is everything within us that we have refused to acknowledge: our insecurities, our secret shames, our untamed aggressions, our hidden potentials. Because we cannot bear to look at these things within ourselves, we unconsciously project them onto others. We essentially use other people as a mirror to see the parts of ourselves we have hidden in the dark. You see it everywhere. Consider the manager at a tech startup in Austin. A man who is terrified of his own incompetence. He fears he's an imposter, that he doesn't deserve his position. But he could never admit this, not even to himself. So, how does this shadow manifest? He projects it. He becomes a relentless micromanager. He questions every decision his talented team makes. He sends emails at 10 p.m. demanding updates on trivial tasks. He criticizes his brightest engineers for a lack of foresight, or a failure to see the big picture. In reality, it is his own lack of foresight he fears. He is manipulating his team into a state of constant anxiety and self-doubt, forcing them to carry the burden of his own insecurity. He creates an environment where no one dares to take a risk, where creativity is stifled by the need for constant approval. He then complains that his team isn't innovative enough, failing to see that he has built the very cage that confines them. He looks at them and sees incompetence when he is really looking in a mirror. Have you ever felt an intense, almost visceral dislike for someone for a seemingly minor reason? Perhaps it's a colleague's attention-seeking behavior or a friend's laziness. The law of the mirror invites you to ask a terrifyingly honest question. In what way am I also this? Where in my own life am I secretly craving attention but am too afraid to ask for it? Where am I being lazy with my own dreams and goals? The architect who is unaware of this law builds a world full of villains. He surrounds himself with people he deems arrogant, selfish, or weak. The walls of his world are papered with his judgments of others. But in truth, he is living in a house of mirrors, and the villain he sees in every room is just a distorted reflection of himself. To build a better world, the architect must first be brave enough to turn around and face his own shadow. This leads us to the second unspoken rule, the law of emotional contagion. This law dictates that your internal emotional state is not a private experience, it is a broadcast. It radiates from you like heat from a fire, and it directly influences the emotional states of those around you. We are all, whether we like it or not, emotional tuning forks. This isn't pseudoscience. It's rooted in the very biology of our brains, specifically in what are known as mirror neurons. These are brain cells that fire not only when we perform an action, but also when we see someone else perform that same action. They are the basis of empathy, allowing us to feel a shadow of what others are feeling. When you see someone smile, your mirror neurons for smiling fire, creating a faint echo of that happiness in your own brain. Conversely, when you are constantly around someone who is anxious, sighing, and tense, your brain begins to mirror that anxiety. You are being manipulated, not by words or actions, but by their very atmosphere. Think about a classic scenario in a shared apartment in a city like Chicago. One roommate is chronically pessimistic. Every morning begins with a complaint about the weather, the news, the coffee. Every story is about a frustrating encounter at work, a rude person on the train, a looming disaster. When you come home, feeling perfectly fine, and walk into the living room where they are sitting, you can feel the mood shift. The air becomes heavier. Your own energy begins to drain. They aren't trying to make you miserable. They are simply living in their own emotional storm, and you are being pulled into the rain. After months of this, you might find yourself becoming more cynical. You start noticing the negative things more. You feel a sense of dread when you hear their key in the door. Their emotional state has contaminated yours. They have, without any conscious intent, manipulated your entire experience of your own home, turning a potential sanctuary into a source of low-grade stress. This law holds immense power for the architect. The emotional bricks you lay determine the entire climate of the structures you build. If you lay bricks of chronic stress, cynicism, and anxiety, you will build a cold, damp house where no one, including yourself, feels comfortable. People will make excuses not to visit. Opportunities will seem to dry up, because who wants to collaborate in an atmosphere of negativity? Conversely, if you consciously cultivate an internal state of calm, optimism, and genuine warmth, you lay bricks that create a welcoming, vibrant space. You become the person whose presence makes others feel more at ease, more creative, more capable. This isn't about faking happiness. That's a different kind of manipulation. It's about doing the genuine internal work through mindfulness, gratitude, or therapido. Manage your own emotional broadcast. The architect understands that the most powerful way to influence the room is to master what is within. What atmosphere do you carry with you when you enter a room? Are you a source of calm or a carrier of chaos? The choice is the fundamental act of designing your world. The third unspoken rule is the law of the unspoken contract. This law asserts that every action, especially an act of giving, can create an implicit expectation of reciprocity, a hidden clause in a contract no one remembers signing. This is the subtle, often unintentional manipulation of creating social and emotional debt. On the surface, it's driven by the very healthy social principle of reciprocity, a cornerstone of human cooperation. But in its shadow form, it becomes a tool for control. The most common manifestation of this is the gift with strings attached. Imagine a workplace in a competitive field, perhaps a law firm in New York City. There is a senior associate, let's call him David, who is incredibly helpful. He frequently offers to review your briefs. He brings you coffee when he gets his own. He shares valuable insights from his past cases. You feel a growing sense of gratitude and camaraderie. He seems like a true mentor and ally. You are receiving these gifts and banking a sense of obligation without even realizing it. Then, the day comes when a controversial firm policy is being debated. It's a policy you believe is unethical and bad for morale. David, it turns out, is a major proponent of it because it benefits his career track. He comes to you, not with arguments or logic, but with a simple, friendly request. Hey, I need you to back me up on this one. We're a team, right? Suddenly, you are in a psychological trap. To refuse feels like an act of profound betrayal. You would be breaking the unspoken contract. All those coffees, all that help, were not just acts of kindness. They were deposits into an account of obligation. Now, he's making a withdrawal. This is a masterful, if unconscious, manipulation. He hasn't threatened you. He hasn't bribed you. He has simply leveraged the powerful human aversion to feeling like an ungrateful hypocrite. In the language of social psychology, you are experiencing cognitive dissonance, the intense discomfort of holding two conflicting ideas. David is my friend and ally who has helped me, and I must oppose David on a matter of principle. To resolve this dissonance, the easiest path is often to cave, to tell yourself the policy isn't that bad, and to support him. You have been manipulated into betraying your own values, not by force, but by the weight of an unwritten debt. The conscious architect is acutely aware of this law. When giving, they give cleanly, without expectation. Their generosity is a brick for a bridge, not a hook for a future favor. And when receiving, they are mindful of the potential for unspoken contracts. They express clear gratitude but maintain their own sovereignty. They understand that true collaboration is built on transparent agreements, not on murky feelings of obligation. They ask themselves, is this gift a brick or is it a chain? By recognizing this law, you can keep your relationships clean, honest, and free from the hidden resentments that build up when unspoken contracts are inevitably broken. This brings us to our fourth rule, one that operates almost entirely inside our own heads, but has profound consequences for our external world: the law of the narrative. This law states that whoever controls the story controls reality. We are storytelling creatures. We don't just experience events, we interpret them, we frame them, and we weave them into a coherent narrative about who we are and how the world works. This process of framing is one of the most powerful forms of self-manipulation there is. We do it to avoid the painful sting of cognitive dissonance, a concept brilliantly identified by psychologist Leon Festinger. Festinger's theory suggests that we have a deep-seated need for our internal world or beliefs, attitudes, and values to be consistent. When our actions contradict our beliefs, we experience a state of mental stress, of dissonance. To relieve this stress, we can either change our actions or, far more commonly, we change our story. Let's take a deeply personal and common example from life in a place like California, where lifestyle and image can be paramount. A man, we'll call him Michael, has always seen himself as a financially prudent and responsible person. That is a core part of his identity narrative. But he gets caught up in the desire for status and makes a disastrous financial decision. He leases a luxury electric car that costs nearly 30% of his monthly income. The payments immediately begin to cause immense stress. He can't save money, he's constantly worried, and he has to cut back on things he truly values, like family vacations. Here, the action, leasing the expensive car, is in direct conflict with his belief: I am a financially responsible person. The cognitive dissonance is deafening. So what does he do? Does he admit the mistake, sell the car, and take the financial loss? That would be a painful blow to his ego. Instead, he begins to manipulate the narrative. To his friends, he says, "It's really an investment in technology. I'm supporting a sustainable future." To his wife, he justifies it by saying, "The advanced safety features are non-negotiable for our family's security." To himself, he repeats a mantra: I work incredibly hard. I deserve to have something nice. Life is short. He starts posting pictures of the car on social media, basking in the validation and likes, which serve as evidence for his new narrative. He has not changed the reality of his financial strain, but he has changed the story he tells about it. He has manipulated himself into believing his irresponsible act was actually a virtuous or deserved one. The architect who falls prey to this law builds a beautiful facade on a house with a crumbling foundation. From the outside, the story is perfect. Inside, the structure is groaning under the strain of self-deception. This self-manipulation prevents growth. Michael won't learn from his financial mistake because he has reframed it as a success. This pattern will repeat. The conscious architect, however, practices the art of radical honesty, especially with themselves. They embrace dissonance as a signal of flashing red light on the dashboard of the mind, indicating a misalignment between actions and values. They are willing to say, I made a mistake. My action was inconsistent with who I want to be. They understand that the most robust and authentic narrative is not one of perfection, but one of self-correction. What stories are you telling yourself? Are they honest reflections of reality, or are they elegant tapestries designed to cover up uncomfortable truths? The ability to control your own narrative is the ability to control your own growth. Finally, we arrive at the fifth unspoken rule, which is perhaps the most passive, yet most destructive: the law of the vacuum. This law states that a lack of authentic self-expression creates a vacuum, and that vacuum will inevitably be filled by the projections, assumptions, and needs of others. Your silence is not neutral. Your agreeableness is not just kindness. Your refusal to state your needs is not selflessness. They are empty spaces, and human nature, like physical nature, abhors a vacuum. When you do not define who you are, what you stand for, and what you need, you are non-verbally manipulating others into defining you on their terms. This is the tragic story of the people pleaser, a common archetype in many social settings, from a Midwestern family gathering to a high-pressure nonprofit organization. Let's imagine Sarah, a graphic designer at a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. She is talented, kind, and deeply committed to the cause. Her core desire is to be liked and to avoid conflict at all costs, so she never says no. Can you stay late to finish this report? Of course. Can you take on this extra project, even though it's not your job? No problem. Can you come in on a Saturday? She sighs internally but says, happy to help. She never expresses her own creative ideas in meetings for fear they might be rejected. She never voices her need for a better work-life balance. She presents herself as a blank slate of agreeableness. She believes this makes her a good and valuable team member. In reality, she has created a vacuum. Her colleagues and her boss don't see Sarah, the talented designer with needs and limits. They see the resource that always says yes. Her vacuum of self has been filled with their need for convenience. They aren't malicious people. They are simply responding to the environment she has created. She has manipulated them into seeing her as a utility rather than a person. And what is the result? Resentment. Sarah becomes bitter and burned out. She complains to her friends that she is being taken for granted, that no one respects her. She fails to see that she taught them how to treat her. She created the unspoken rule: my needs don't matter. The work of the renowned researcher Brené Brown on vulnerability speaks directly to this. Brown argues that true connection and belonging can only come from vulnerability, from the courage to be seen in our imperfection, to state our needs, to draw our boundaries. Authenticity is the opposite of a vacuum. It is a full, solid presence. The conscious architect understands this. They know that building a strong structure requires them to be a strong element within it. They build with the bricks of clear yeses and courageous no's. They understand that stating a need is not an act of aggression, but an act of information, allowing others to engage with the real person, not the empty space. They are not afraid of the occasional friction that comes from authenticity, because they know it is far healthier than the slow-growing cancer of resentment that comes from a vacuum of self. So, ask yourself, where in your life have you created a vacuum? Where have you been silent when you needed to speak? In not defining yourself, who have you allowed to define you? Filling that vacuum with your authentic self is the ultimate act of reclaiming the blueprints to your own life. So here we stand, amidst the 5 laws: the mirror of projection, the contagion of emotion, the unspoken contract, the narrative of self-deception, and the vacuum of inauthenticity. The architect within you now sees the blueprints, and the revelation is not that manipulation is a tool to be used on others, but that it is a system we are all living within, often directed at ourselves. You have been building on autopilot, using blueprints handed down to you by your upbringing, your fears, your society. You have built walls where you needed bridges, and cages where you yearned for open fields. This is the great breakthrough moment for the architect, the realization that you are not a victim of the house you live in. You built it, brick by brick, and therefore, you have the power to renovate. You have the power to tear down the walls that no longer serve you and use those very same bricks to build something new. The common misconception we must dismantle is that changing your world requires grand, dramatic gesturessa, sudden career change, moving across the country, cutting everyone off. That's the stuff of movies. The real work of the architect is quieter, more deliberate. It happens in the small choices you make every single day. It's about choosing to lay a different kind of brick. When you feel that hot flash of judgment towards someone, the law of the mirror, you pause. You ask, what is this showing me about my own shadow? You lay a brick of self-inquiry instead of a brick of judgment. When you feel the familiar wave of anxiety or pessimism washing over you, the law of emotional contagion, you take 5 deep breaths. You put on music that lifts you. You consciously choose to broadcast calm instead of chaos. You lay a brick of emotional responsibility. When you do a favor for someone, the law of the unspoken contract, you do it cleanly. And you say to yourself, this is a gift, not a loan. You lay a brick of unconditional support. When you make a mistake, the law of the narrative, you resist the urge to spin a story of justification. You say, I messed up. And in doing so, you lay a brick of humility and strength, the very foundation of growth. When you are in a situation where it would be easier to stay silent and agreeable, the law of the vacuum, you find the courage to speak your truth, gently but clearly. Actually, I see it a bit differently. Or, I won't be able to do that, but I can do this. You lay a brick of authenticity. This is the path to empowerment. It is not a promise of a perfect life, free from pain or conflict. The world will always be full of other architects building their own structures. Sometimes their walls will bump up against yours, but you will no longer be living in a prison of your own making. You will be the conscious creator of a sanctuary, a place built on the principles of self-awareness, emotional integrity, authentic connection, and radical honesty. The feedback loops will still come back to you, but now what you send out is intentional. You send out respect, so respect comes back. You send out clarity, so clarity comes back. You send out kindness, not the weak kindness of the people-pleaser, but the strong kindness of someone who is whole, and that is what returns to knock on your door. The journey of the architect is lifelong. The house is never truly finished, but every day presents a new opportunity to build. The next time you find yourself in a moment of choice, in a conversation, in a silent thought, I want you to ask yourself one simple question. What brick am I laying right now? Is this a brick for a wall that will isolate me, or is it a brick for a bridge that will connect me? Is this a brick for a prison of fear, or a brick for a home of love? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. Go and build wisely.